Jon Cohen, Deep Meadow Farm, Ascutney, Vermont, planet Earth.
And this is the Farmer's Share. I'm your host, Andy Chamberlain, and I take you behind the scenes with growers who share their strategy for achieving the triple bottom line of sustainability. These interviews unravel how they're building their business to balance success across people, profits, and our planet. Today's episode comes to you from Ascutney, Vermont, where we visit with Jon Cohen of Deep Meadow Farm. Our conversation starts off by the farm stand and wanders towards the greenhouse before moving to the brassica field. Jon shares what he likes and dislikes about the Wizard vacuum seeder and reflects on his career as a farmer. I hope you enjoy this episode.
The struggles are the same struggles I think we all deal with in some ways. It's never enough time. You know?
Right.
And we're trying to do everything we can in 6 months that we should be doing in a year.
Yeah.
Let's do it. You'll have to guide me. I'll walk and talk with you. So I'm going to do like more of a farm tour, but I'm going to do a farm tour behind the curtain, okay?
That's exactly what I want.
So we've been here for about, I think this is our 12th season being on the land here. Came here having a fairly successful business working about 12, 15 acres in Westminster, hit the ground, and quickly realized that the equipment and infrastructure we had wasn't even close to what it took to get this thing moving. So we ended up, I think, first year replicating that 12 acres that we did in Westminster or so out of the 50 plus acres that we have accessible here. So that was fascinating. And with 4 people doing that. So 4 or 5 people. And it was a quick kind of, learning curve. And then there are just great things out there like Vern, who, just is really good at certain things that he does. So he, after the first year, connected us with this amazing program the Castagna Foundation was doing. They were funding, they didn't want to give out grants. They wanted to specifically buy equipment and offset the cost of that equipment over a 5-year period. And that quickly gave us, a large tractor, ice machine, wash line, pallet jacks, and some things that we were in dire need of just to even get started with. So that was the initial game changer that we started to say, oh, this is what it takes to farm 50 acres. I think it's actually taken us about 10 years to fully kind of vet out what it really takes to do that. And I think last 2 years we've just begun to see what the infrastructure and the labor force looks like to not just be successful, but to have it thrive, so to speak. And part of that's been, a lot of experimenting and moving. So, this greenhouse is a great example of that. It's been our foray into doing bedding plants and early retail sales. And I would say, like many things, it's all about labor. I am, as the farmer, we're always spread thin. So taking on a new project can somewhat fall into what I do, but it's just not the resources for it. So we've experimented a little bit in that domain, buying in bedding plants, growing out seedlings and stuff like that. We did that 2 years. We realized that it's not what we do specifically. We can grow it, but our location doesn't support a huge growth. So this past year we cut back probably 70% and did everything from seed and actually sold out of everything that we grew. So we scaled down and it was much more successful, less resources.
Scaled back what aspects?
Production, how much we produced. Okay. We bought nothing in. We did everything from seed, only things we could do from seed. We probably did 30% of our flowers and veg, bedding plants.
Bedding plants you dialed back 70%.
Yeah, significantly. And seedlings, veg seedlings. Yeah. I think we're pushing about 50 acres of veg right now. A little mixed. I mean, we're probably, it's 6 greenhouses, some raspberries, quite a bit of strawberries. So fallow, we run about 2 acres a year. We're really pushing quite a bit. In terms of cover crop, we are probably covering about 30 acres for winter rye every year. And then the rest, it's a combination of things. This year we're receiving a no-till drill seeder, and that will be a game changer for us. It'll give us the ability to start, coming in right behind crops and seeding after that.
Is that 50 acres including the cover crop or on 50 acres of production?
That's including the cover crop.
Yeah.
Yep. So
That's what I figured.
we're probably around 46, 47
Yeah,
acres.
no, that's impressive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
And you're just a bit retail here and mostly wholesale, right?
No, we do. I mean, I would say we're probably running about 25 to 30% retail.
Oh,
we do a significant number. I mean, so we do 3 farmers markets a week. So we're doing 3 farmers markets. 2 of them, we are fairly the anchor farm of those markets. We also are, we do the winter market in Brattleboro. We're also sort of the anchor farm of that market. And then we do sort of more of roots. We supplement at Norwich. And that's more about keeping employees on year round. And that's been a big push for us. We now are at 2. We're trying to figure out how to get a 3rd person on year round. And that's just that part of that whole thing of keeping people on and keeping trained staff and keeping staff.
2 people in addition to you and your son?
2 people in addition to my son and I, yep. And then we have 4 H2A workers. And we were bidding on a house across the street. They got way too much money for it. So we're looking at renovating the basement into 2 more bedrooms. So that would give us 6 H2A workers. Yeah, well, that's what we'll walk and we'll talk a little bit about it here. So this came about, just as a, kind of a way to do that. But we also we didn't have enough prop space, so it's so half and half, and it gave us we're pretty much between these 2 houses here able to create get everything started we need to. It's still a little of a crunch, but with fuel prices, it's that's been the big challenge right now, and we're running a combination of propane and oil. So prop house, a little bit of we're not using a tray filler, but we do, which would be helpful, but we are using a vacuum seeder. Yep. And then we, little things. You ask about things that make a difference. Love these things. Dibblers. So, and this is all 3D printer.
So where'd you pick that up from?
Somebody's making them out, I don't know, the Midwest or something like that. We'd actually talked about making them ourselves. Yeah. But what was interesting is that, and it was fine, but I didn't realize that we were paying for the prototypes to get the right size. I think I would have, I didn't realize that was part of what we did. So we figured it out, and the dibble could have been a little deeper, but I will say in terms of germination, it's been great. Just getting that right size.
I've heard that because it helps not only get consistent depth, but it also centers the seed, and it's
right. And less about centering. That's never really been a problem as much, but it's the depth and getting people to adjust to that thinking. And this is probably our 4th greenhouse manager, and he's still struggling a little bit, because it just they have to be done perfectly, So anyway, typical prop house, hardening off outside.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. Your space between the greenhouses is utilized uniquely. And
then that's just a roll down top cold frame. Yeah, we've been working with Becky quite a bit, Becky Madden quite a bit, on nutrients here, and our big problem obviously is heat in the greenhouses, like many of us. And dealing with gray mold or botrytis. We're having pretty good luck right now with a product called Stargus. It's a bacillus-based product, and we're not seeing the same kind of damage we've seen historically. We're also doing heavy nutrient loads, much more than we ever did. Yeah. So we are fertigating quite a bit, nitrogen and potassium. So we've gotten 2 full cuts out of this already. Now we're coming to our 3rd.
It's a pretty good 3rd crop of basil we're looking at.
It is. And it's actually, we've actually been talking about pulling cucumbers out of here because we do so well with the basil. And the cucumbers, It's just, we need a house just for cucumbers. Yeah. That's netted. But yeah, so usually, we're picking week to week back and forth. Actually, a funny story, that second greenhouse there, that little one, the 17-foot Ledgewood, I bought from Ed. He had just started his business back in 80, I think this might have been 87 I bought it, or they were just getting off the ground. And it was a 20-foot by 17. It was our first house on our first farm, our first greenhouse on our first farm. And since obviously we added the other 80 feet to it, but that was the 86 feet. So, and then some of these houses, were just like, were NRCS, were like people getting rid of old houses originally. And it was like, back years ago, it was just scrounging for everything we could before NRCS started doing the houses. And then we had those two big 144-foot houses. Those are NRCS houses, which was, again, just every piece here has been, I think, an expansion and a game changer. So one of those houses we use for winter crops, and then we do tomatoes. And the other house is just the 3 seasons, so it's the shoulders and the winter, and we're getting ready to till everything there under and done. And some asparagus in between. So what words of wisdom? Stay on top of your weeds. Do everything you can. And it was interesting this year, and I think it's the first time, we've been in a position to be able to do this, but is the we started off not being able to find anybody at all. Employment has just been a disaster. And slowly we've been finding people trickling in looking for work, and we're overhiring. And we've never done that before.
Like bringing on more people than you think you need?
Yes. But I will tell you something, we're still running below estimated budget, but we're covering more hours than we've ever been able to cover by doing that. Because people don't show up every single day, people don't stay, people come and go, and it's allowing. So unfortunately, you have to. It's like a gamble, but it's been much more effective in terms of managing the threshold of what we need for some of those tasks that you just need people for, like like weeding out on plastic.
So was that? I mean, that seems like a kind of a new idea.
It is.
Was that a tough pill to swallow? Thinking I'm going to bring on somebody else I don't know that I need.
It is right. We're dealing with it right now.
Yeah.
But I haven't gone above, on our biweekly payroll. We're still where we need to be, but we decided we were going to borrow more. We would borrow more money if we had to. Only because it is now where we really need the help.
Yeah.
And we figured, okay, you know what? Maybe you have to let people go sometimes, but it was better to have the help that we needed when we needed it than to be scrambling all the time. And I will say that we're seeing some of the results in terms of our weed management.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was a little very hard to. Sometimes you got to take chances.
Yeah.
But I decided that this year, because what we saw the past 2 years with the pandemic was such a struggle. I was doing 60, 70 hours a week. And I just don't have it in me anymore, So I used to.
No,
he does, and I'm still doing 50, but I'm still working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But not like I was during the pandemic. It was got to be a little too much. But I would say, it's being on land is it's the relationship between, it's the observation and the relationship of the farmer and the land. So I mean, having worked at other places, I think it takes a while to learn your land, learn your rotations. We're now in our 3rd rotation on the property, so we have history. We have that history of knowing kind of our income and our sales a little bit, and you need that. Without that, you're kind of every year is just a gamble and a guess. So we learned very quickly the name of the game here was water. It wasn't necessarily nutrients. We probably had the nutrients, we were getting it down, but we just couldn't get enough water to the property. So, for example, we're on sand. We probably have out here about 15,000 feet of plastic. We have a well that pumps substantial water. So Becky dropped off a meter the other day. We run it for 12 hours. We had pumped 90,000 gallons. In that 12 hours. So, and everything was about where it needed to be.
Yeah, that's a regular day.
And that was like mind-boggling, and that's just this, about, 8 acres or so. That's what it took. So
8 acres in plastic on drip,
about that, yeah.
900,000?
90,000.
90,000 gallons of water.
Yeah. And that's to get things to a place where there's water.
And you run that every day?
No. That's we run it because it's plastic, like maybe once a week to once every 2 weeks.
Oh, that's okay.
No, but it was just the glimmer into. So we know here that we have to water, and so for example, we had no germination this year on our parsnips, and second year in a row we bought this new wizard cedar, which is we love, which we swear by. We've had them for a couple of years now, and I swore it was the cedar. I swore it was this and that, and then we started to run static irrigation on the outside of our blocks. And all of a sudden, we were getting better germination. I was like, all right, well, this is just stupid, But because I think what was happening was this, the wizard is so precise that we're not planting as deep as we were, or we're not planting as something as we were, or we're not dropping as much seed as we were, because you used about 40% less seed. So, but we weren't getting germination. So now we're, every time we do direct seeding blocks, we set up static on either side and just run it every other day if we need to.
Until it gets going.
Until it gets going. Yep. So, little obvious things like we should know that. We knew that all along. But I think part of it is having a guy who is committed to making sure that irrigation goes on. And then what are you taking away from if you do that? So that's the game we play. I think all the time is, it's like if you use resources here, what else is not getting done? And I don't know that there is an answer for that. I think that's the dilemma we all face. I would say, from the smaller farm, when we were doing, the 15 acres and there was 4 of us, or so, semi-mechanized. It was the same issue to being bigger. The difference between bigger is we have more to do, but at the same time, you can, many hands make, the work go faster. You can get more done, and I think that's the difference is we can get a project done here pretty quickly. So if we have to get something done as an emergency, we can mobilize to that. So there is, something about being bigger that really makes resources more available to you. It also allows for greater losses in some areas because you can cover them through diversity. So also, there's a great game changer for us, was a harvester, and this is just the fortune of like Bruce Kaufman said to me one day, would you be interested in a harvester? And I said, what are you doing with yours? He said, well, I'm going to sell it to you for a great price if you're going to use it. And I said, sure, and it was a little bit it's like, and this is what we do. How do I get it here? What is it going to cost me? What's the resources? But, simple game changer.
So it's pretty easy to adopt the practices that you needed to change in order to implement into your system.
Absolutely.
Because you were already harvesting by the bin and moving stuff by the forks.
Not like this, though.
Not at that point.
Not at that level. The answer to your question is yes, but not. I mean, we were still digging potatoes with a chechi, picking them up into black boxes, and then dumping them into bins.
Yeah.
Same with carrots.
So yes, but yeah, not.
So a lot of harvesting at that level, but still manual. I mean, now we use that. They go right into those, the 20 bushel bins, the Gaylords, and that's it, So, what is the biggest resource? Other farmers. That is the biggest resource. So having somebody, either you've worked on another farm or another farmer or you have somebody to bounce ideas off of, having been in Westminster and being able to kind of work around Harlow's was just instrumental in bringing us some of the systems that we use. So everything's done on raised beds. Most things are done on raised beds. Obviously, we don't do our winter squash on raised beds. But all of our transplanted crops, our main ones are done on double rows, 15-inch spacing, and then 12-inch in row for the most part. Maybe cabbage is 14. I think we alternate 24 inches for Brussels sprouts. But so far this year, I would say for where we've been able to keep up with everything, it's been a great growing season.
Good.
I mean, we are thrilled with what we're seeing, and we've had some really, really wet seasons.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, we're not seeing. Usually, we're hammered between flea beetles and and botrytis or black spot, and so far so good. I'm just not seeing the same disease pressure that we typically see in the wet seasons we've been dealing with. And it's funny because we hear a lot about strategies to deal with climate change. I don't know what we do differently. I mean, for me there is nothing. I mean, there may be some subtle things that we're already doing, but when it's wet, it's wet. There is no option. I'd rather it be drier, and it's been pretty dry and pumping water than wet.
Well, you're on a pretty big river, so water
Water
shouldn't
is not
be
a
an
problem,
issue
but water is a problem to the extent that we have to get it onto the fields. So
there's an energy expense to that.
There is an equipment expense. So we have 2 static lines. We have 1 traveler. We have a grant for underground irrigation and for buried line, and we have not yet been able to get the pipe because of availability of equipment. And then again, for us, it was dialing in cultivation. So this is the tool that I use for this is just for this. Is just for that high kale. It's just old school 3 shovels.
Nothing fancy.
It's nothing fancy. It's blind cultivation, but it just because this is going to sit here all season long, and we're going to keep stripping leaves. It's just quick cultivation.
It looks like a fairly aggressive cultivation. Like
it is.
It's deep, hilled.
Right, but we're an inch or 2 below the surface. But I'm throwing soil, so because I can't cultivate in row, so So for the shovels to throw enough soil, I'm running probably an inch to 2 inches into the soil. Versus this, which is at some point here, there's just no point in cultivating anymore. We're at the point where, another 2 weeks and we'll pull our garlic.
Because the garlic's out competing it?
Yeah,
it's not worth it, or because it's too big to get in there?
I think that it's not as important at this point because all we're doing is bulb formation at this point. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're out competing it. Now the only problem is that, so here's a great example, where are you going? We could have cultivated this again, so where you choose your battles. What I know is that we're going to get the yields we need to get from this right here and the sizing we need to get.
Uh-huh. It's past the point of having significant impact.
So the only thing we're dealing with here is weed bank,
Right.
and that's a choice. But we've also had 2 tractors down, so
that plays into the decision making.
it does. Yep. So next succession, same thing. So this has probably had I ran baskets, which is pretty standard for us, just right, within a week or 2 after transplanting. After baskets, we're running a Tillmore finger weeder, which is what I did today.
So this is fresh today.
Right. So, but now
Tillmore.
They're coming back and they're cleaning up whatever the Tillmore didn't get. So it doesn't. I mean, I'm a little bit late. So you can see some places, the weeds had already gotten a little too big, and that's what they're just doing. They're just going behind. They're cleaning it up. And then we're back to, that's probably it until it gets, that'll probably get canopy, and we'll just keep running our shovels after that to go through the season. So 3 successions, this is our second, and then we'll do 1 more sometime here soon, to kind of carry us into the fall, carries us usually into early November, late October. And then just running some rears for tire tracks. And we still haven't gotten the Tillmores dialed in perfectly because we're running it belly mounted. But again, it's one of those things we're playing with. We love these finger weeders. We do have a cress. The nice thing about the belly mount on the L245 is it's 1 person. The cress requires 2 people.
Yep.
And I have to be very honest, our cress hasn't come out of the barn for 2 years now. Yeah, because of the belly mounted Kubota setup I have. And the cress worked better, but I've got to pull something. It takes 2 people, and that's a huge difference.
The convenience of just somebody hopping on and going.
Yep, usually me.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, things that never change, like labor has always been a challenge. So that right there is why that tool wins out.
It's labor. It's qualified labor. It's, I mean, what I would give for, what I want is not, it's not equipment. It is another person who is committed to cultivation and tractor work besides my son and I. And they come and they go, but somebody who, could do that, that is the greatest gift that we could find for ourselves at our scale, is that tractor person who, I have somebody on the tractor constantly, every day, 5-6 days a week. They come in, they do something, whether it's, cultivating the edge of plastic or, running this or, spreading for us or something like that.
Dressing things up.
Yes, yeah. But this cleans up. I mean, the Tillmore finger weeders are a game changer. I mean, for the most part, when the weeds aren't too big, they're cleaning up everything in row. The problem is they work really well on brassicas. They're not as they throw dirt, so you really can't use them in lettuce as effectively as so it's pretty much lettuce is still. I won't walk you over to lettuce, but there's about 6 acres of lettuce over there.
Because the brassicas are taller, or their texture, just the dirt doesn't stick.
The primary, the growth habit is up, a vertical,
right,
versus the lettuce and bottom rot. So if you're building up lettuce on the bottom of building up soil on the bottom of lettuce, you're creating that environment for bottom rot.
Yeah. You said you can get people who like to do tractor work and then they move on. Are they moving on because they're college kids, or they go to a different farm, or?
Let me think. So the last guy went to go work for a well company who poached him for about $10 more an hour. So that was one person. Another person, he was semi-retired and just decided that he just didn't want to do it anymore, So he's actually decided he's going to stay home more and create a big garden. I saw they were selling strawberries on the side of the road this year, so that was kind of fun. But still friends. It was just It was so various reasons. I think that it's some of the age-old adages. People start their own farms. People go on to something else. But yeah. So anyway, lots of stuff out there. I mean, potatoes. We're not going to talk about potato beetles right now because nothing we're doing is working anymore. It's our second year. Entrust we're completely resistant to Entrust. So we are waiting to see if the whole crop goes down again.
Are there beetles on it now?
Oh yeah, it's bad. And it's just, it spreads from a corner. So Kyle's going to actually try to spray. It's going to be our last spraying of Entrust. We're going to try it. We've been using Entrust and Pyganic. Very little effect. So I think that after this year, it could be 3 to 5 more years before we plant potatoes again. I don't think we have a choice. I think we're out, and it's a big crop for us. We've done 30 to 40,000 pounds every year. So I don't have the answer. I called Harlow's the other day just to check in with them and see what they were doing. Corey said that they were still not having problems. Entrust was still working for them. So I don't know the answer. But yep, there's beetles, there's larvae, there's plants that are starting to look fairly desiccated. We're going to try to spray at the end of the day today to see if an evening spray works any better. I'm not very happy about it. So that was interesting. All the way at the end, yeah. Anyway, so that's been, it's their highs and their lows. That's a disappointment for us.
Oh yeah, because it's not just disappointing for this year.
It means we don't grow potatoes anymore.
Yeah.
Which has always been a big part of our winter production. So we'll figure something else out. We were talking about was doing less and covering. Actually putting down fabric and having to manage the fabric, and that may get us through. My impression that fabric would work. The beetles are crawling across the land, and if they can't get in, they can't get in.
Well,
so we'll see.
They come out of the ground a lot, right?
Well, they come out of the ground from somewhere near where they last were, and then they crawl to wherever the new place they're going to come up is. Then they can fly. But that first emergence, my understanding is they crawl to wherever they have to go. So they will crawl half a mile to get here, and it's like just astonishing to me. So anyway, so there's 5 acres of potatoes out there. So there's probably 40,000 leeks, parsley, celeriac, and all of our direct seeded carrots and beets and stuff like that. They're trying to dig out parsnips from the weeds right now because they were germinating so slowly that the weeds got ahead of them. So That's what the H2A workers work magic out here on some stuff. So we'll see how they do.
So this is all prepped for the next rounds of planting.
Well, yep. So we just we were a little bit behind. We were going to put in quite a bit more delicata. That's all delicata here, but we only put in, I think we put in another. So that was 50 trays, 2,500 plants, and then this is all going to be for this is all kale, collards, and fall cabbage.
What was here before it?
Nothing. Cover crop.
Oh.
Yep. So it all just got plowed down about 2 weeks ago, and then I just went through with the Perfecta and getting it prepped out. So I'll start making beds tomorrow morning.
It's a nice clean bed.
Well, that's because it was just cleaned yesterday.
With the Perfecta.
Yep. So here we are. You know, all of this stuff, you know, we didn't have when we got here. You know, so it's just been incrementally, you know.
It looks tilled and raked. I didn't know a Perfecta could get that smooth. I guess it's your sandy soils.
Yes.
Sure helps out.
Yeah.
That must be a tool you quite enjoy.
Love it. Well, it's nothing like a level seed bed, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then all this is, you know, we had this we've been using for about 2 decades now, but we had a pan welded for us that makes all these beds. So that's just a welded pan. It's great, works great. But we actually, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but we've been talking to Brookdale about a reverse rototiller thing that actually bed forms and will bury cover crop at the same time. You've heard about these things. Yeah. So we actually put an order in for one. And we're hoping, I mean, our problem is that all of this is done, so that's a 2-step process, but we ridge with the L245, and then I come back through and I pull the beds out. So the problem with this new piece of equipment is I don't know if it'll work on a 27 horsepower tractor. Right. So if it doesn't, what we're going to end up doing, I think, is we're going to end up having to offset it to one side, and we'll only be able, or either we'll offset it going back and forth. But my feeling is that we're probably not going to get, our spacing is going to be a little bit more challenging to stay with the same, I think it's 42 inches on center.
To keep with your cultivation practices.
Right, to keep it. Well, that wouldn't be necessarily the biggest issue, because, you know, if our tire track was bigger, we would just, you know, create a bigger rear or something like that. But that, you know, to space utilization, I mean, the reason we do this narrow gauge is because we're getting more, we think we're getting more rows in per thing. Maybe not for direct seeded stuff, because we use the same cultivation for direct seeded. And I mean, we probably could go a little bit wider and maybe get more with a 3-row, but we're set up on 2-row. The thing about 2-row that we loved was that you're never picking into the center, and you don't have to weed to reach into the center. So that's really what was one of the
ergonomically.
Ergonomically, you got it.
Right.
Right, so you're never reaching to the center.
Yep.
You work one side of the bed at a time.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, it's again, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, when we started, I don't think we had the wisdom to think, okay, where are we going to be in 20 years? What do we want to have, you know? And there's some things we would change. I mean, we do our corn on the same system here. So we're doing corn 2 rows every 12 inches. We get decent yields, but I think that I would prefer to do 2 rows on, you know, 2.5 foot spacing, and running some, like, you know, Lillistons and hilling that stuff and just being more aggressive instead of, you know, I just ran the corn. So I mean, again, baskets and finger weeders, and then into those just those shovels, those 3 shovels, which throws a lot of dirt. So that's the nice thing about those. And then plastic, you know, lots of plastic. So yeah, onions and shallots and cucumbers and squash, and
You got a lot of space between your plastic.
well, we run enough so we can drive a truck up and down between it and harvest out of it. So there is a opportunity where we are actually at the space that we'll be able to run that drill seeder. that if we want to start doing cover crop, but we've done both here. The advantage to cover cropping is wonderful. The problem with cover cropping is that it's more work. We've run cover cropping between the rows. I'm in for a mower at that point, you know? So, then I'm mowing. So the questions are, we going to mow and have, more tilth to our soil and add that in, or are we going to keep doing what we do? So it's a good question. I don't know the answer yet. I think old systems are hard to change sometimes. Vern and I have this conversation often. Vern says exactly the same thing. That's a lot of open, bare soil that's sitting bare during the season. And for me, on this particular field, our weed pressure is so heavy that every time we've tried to do something, we can't outcompete the weeds. So I've been inclined to, and I'll start running. I have actually a nice setup that cleans up the edge of this. Yeah. But it's, am I going to fight the weeds, for the next crop that's not on plastic, or am I going to, keep hammering them and try to get them under control? I don't have an easy answer.
Yeah.
But the onions look good, and thrip damage isn't too bad yet.
No, everybody has a reason for doing things. It's just
there's convenience, and then there's what we know works. In an ideal world, this would be cover cropped, and we would be mowing it, or it would be easier to control. But I don't know. I look at other land nearby, and our weed pressure seems to be intense. Our bug pressure, our weed pressure, our disease pressure. No, I'll tell you though, we've tried to do, so 2 years ago we tried to do our onions on like the same spacing we do our strawberries. And we ran weed mat. So we do our strawberries on plastic weed mat, pretty standard. And that works pretty well for us, and they stay for a long time. We tried to do with onions, and it just didn't work as well, and it was a big pain in the ass. So we just went back to our old systems.
Well, there's that too. If it works, it works.
If it works, it works.
Don't fix what ain't broke, right?
But in an ideal world, like you said, how much would be in cover crop? That would like that whole area up in there. Although we let our winter rye go for a while, yeah. But it would have been a mix, and that's where I think the drill seeder is going to make a difference. Is we're going to be able to do some more things, rather than just broadcast spreading rye. We'll be able to. So as soon as I'm done. So where are we coming up on done? Oh, so our first two lettuce plantings are almost done over there. So I'd come in behind those now and maybe seed out to something, maybe, I don't know. It would create some options for us.
Yeah.
We're in July, so, we still be able to get maybe some, a mix of grass and some legume or something like that. But or even buckwheat where we're so one of our problems is, planting stuff is getting cover crop on where we're direct seeding next year. So really we would then be able to maybe go to buckwheat instead of rye, so that we get winter die down, and then it breaks down a little bit quicker in the spring. Obviously rye takes forever to break down.
Yeah.
So
especially if you let it go late.
Yeah. That's right, especially if you let it get woody. So here's another piece that I could show you actually. So this is what we roll out our beds with for doing field greens.
It's a heavy implement.
It is. It's an old ski slope groomer.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So just basically 3-point mounted. We, rototill a bed, roll this out, perfectly flat surface. Actually, I'll show you.
It looks like the Johnny's roller on large scale.
Well, we have one of those. Actually.
Yeah.
We use one of those in our greenhouse, but they're hard to use. Greens beds, rolled out greens beds. We'll flame weed those before we seed them, and then I just put in 2 new beds for now, and those will get rolled out. And then so this is probably one of the more labor-intensive processes, but it's rototilling, rolling out the beds, fertilizing the beds. Johnny's 6-row seeder, irrigation. Greens harvester.
What are you using for a harvester?
The drill greens harvester.
Yeah, the quick cut.
Quick cut. Yep. And then just going through and, you know, before we start, the grass, it doesn't respond well to flame weeding.
It doesn't care.
No, but, you know, custom-made tractor mounted flame weeder.
So is this isn't rolled, right?
Nope, that's
just
unrolled.
tilled?
So the only, this is me coming off the edge so I'll roll, that'll be the center of like 2 beds like that. I'll roll these beds. There's 2 beds unrolled.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can see the corrugation here.
Exactly. So that is what that gets turned into, and you can just see a nice firm bed for planting.
So this was previously tilled?
I just tilled that today. Yep.
Fluffed and packed.
It's nice, huh?
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Flat.
Flat. So when you run your Johnny Cedar across, you don't get stuck. It doesn't get hung up. You just go boo, right down the side.
I was talking with another grower who has the stone barrier with a roller on the back, which is the same corrugated pattern, and he said that he liked that a lot because it doesn't just leave it flat and smooth.
Right.
That little bit of texture keeps it from just turning rock hard.
It does. It's a huge difference.
When it rains, it doesn't.
You know, a little flower patch. It's like the necessary flower patch.
Right close to the customer.
Exactly. That's what it's close to the farm stand. Hopefully they'll bunch flowers and sell them, but you never know. So behind here is a 15-foot ceiling room. Yeah. So that now we can put 46 bins in back there. That's what we ended up doing. You know, so that has its own refrigeration. It's got everything. That's our fall. We start loading it in October, and that's what we did. As far as we went, you know. And you know, Kyle and I have been talking about, you know, what's next, but you can't have it all. So you make do. I'll tell you something. You know, one of the things about that is just keeping debt down. You know, it's keeping that return on investment to how much. You know, it's not a question of whether you take on debt, how much debt. You know, at any one given point in time, because we could probably, you know, service more debt, and it probably would pay for itself. Yeah. But you know, to me, that's not the way I play the game. You know.
Is there a certain
2 years.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if there was like
ideally
a certain percentage that you're comfortable with.
I like to see a return on investment that's 2 years. Yeah. And I mean, for most things. But, you know, if we can have another good season like we did last year, we're talking about taking on a, you know, 50,000 plus tractor. Because we have, you know, we have a 90 horsepower. We really need that 105. That's a little newer. That has forks on it that we can move around a ton at a time. You know, we've been able to get by with what we have. I think we're at the point that's not necessarily working.
That would go along with the 20,000 bed former, row shaper, plastic layer.
Those all pay for themselves in a year or so.
Nice.
Well, because the bed former, I'm the only one who can do it right now, or who does it. So it frees me up where I can send somebody else out who has a piece of equipment that's just easy to use. We freed me up. If I do it in half the time, I've saved myself hours. Yeah. So that pays for itself that quickly. So I think that's it, you know. Bed former shaper, so that's that piece. I mean, and everything, you know, it's a, you know, I mean, this, you know, our mechanical transplanter, first year. You know, I mean, we're putting in 10,000 plants, you know, a week kind of thing, you know, or less than a week, but that's a game changer. You know, those are, you know, the Perfecta, actually, I bought that for $900 over in New York State. So it cost me another $500 to get all of the tines and bearings replaced, you know. In, you know, 1 year, we're just moving through crops, less struggle, less ridges to go cultivate. It's a game changer. So I think that's kind of the measure of things, you know, is what changes the game, how quickly, in what regard. And then there's the repairs, you know, how much time we're going to spend on it. I mean, that spreader out there, we make our own compost. We're buying in manure. We're making our own compost. There's no other way to get it out there, you know, so then there are things you have to buy. So, you know, so it's the new tractor, and does the new facility go right there, you know? But that's $400, you know, to get that thing the way it needs to be. It's probably around $400. So that's, you know, 2 big storage units. They both can be adjusted between 50 and 32. Full wash lines, you know, it's at the loading dock. it's not happening for less than,
Yeah.
300 to 400. That's
Yeah.
my thinking,
We were on a couple calls with people the same way. We came up, pipe dream. This would check all the boxes, and they're like, we can't spend $1 million. Like they just can't.
So that's where they're thinking $1 million.
It was between that 500 and $1 million line, and it's like, yeah, they can't. They could probably do it, but it's a big pill to swallow.
The problem is with that is when things go bad.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So losing everything to have the best doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's too much risk.
It's too much risk. It's just too much risk. So I don't know if 500,000 is 5,000 a month.
Yeah, that's what they did too. They were looking at what loan they would need in order to pay for that, and they're like, holy moly.
Well, you figure that's the rule of thumb. It's that what is it, 1%, whatever.
Yeah.
But usually 500,000 is 5,000 is 5,000. Yeah, 1% a month in payments. I can't come. I don't have that. That's an every other week payroll. Could we someday? Yeah, possibly.
Right.
So 18,000 got us that.
Yeah.
40,000 would get us that thing we talked about, but that doesn't give us storage. And really it's all about storage at this point. Because we pack through, you saw, all that stuff today came through here. That's a small order right now. Right. We're just coming into our green season. Because as soon as we get up and running here, we'll pack out, so hang on, so that's 100, 150 cases every 2 days to deep root, not including Black River, not including our local stuff. So those are tough calls, but here's the other side of it. I'm 60, 10 years, and then he gets to decide what he wants to do. He wants to put up more greenhouses. That's where he sees the next thing for himself, 2, 3 more greenhouses. I think I can make do with what we have for the most part. I think that back room in there just added, we now have enough storage where we can bring in most of what we pick. The other side of it is push it out the door as quickly as possible. And then things like potatoes, we've been just sticking out, in other rooms and stuff like that. So, but it's an interesting game.
Do you have a transition plan in place, or you're just still playing it by ear at this point?
I think it's very simple. If he wants it, it's training him to do what it takes. It is next 5 years him learning everything we can. 5 years of letting him manage. And then at 70, he can do what he wants, but he needs to pay me what I draw from the farm.
Okay, yep.
So that value, if he paid me that, if I lived till 90, he didn't get a good deal.
Right.
If I lived to 80, he paid less than it's worth.
Yeah.
I'll still work. I'm here. I'm not going to help out, but I'm not getting up. I'm not running out of bed every morning to, to make sure that the farm stand's covered.
Yeah, but
and then he gets to decide. If he decides he doesn't want to do it, it's called transition. It's called sell.
Yeah.
That's a perfect transition. I have no attachment to any of it really. Yeah. I think I was very fortunate to be able to do what I wanted to do for quite a while. And looks like I'll still get to do it for a while more.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and and I'm not saying there's nothing in that said it was easy.
No.
It was just that I love what I do. I hate some of the things you have to do it. It's like somebody said the other day, "So you busy?" I said, "I'm busy all the time, and sometimes I even work." But yeah, I think the hardest part is there were some real steep curves in scaling up in terms of learning how to manage. I think that was the farming piece was, you could somehow those problems can be solved much more easily than the how to manage other people, and that was the bigger challenge, definitely the bigger of the challenges. But it took me a while, and I think we're just getting the hang on it, handle on it. Yeah. But that's the one I don't know. I think the difficulty is some people come by it more naturally and intuitively, and some of us have to learn by being beat over the head.
Yeah.
And some of us, I don't think, ever get it.
And the management side of things.
The management side of things.
Yeah.
But that's been the challenge. I mean, I would say very much so. And that's the way it goes. Wizard cedar, right there. Yep. So this is our fourth or fifth year using one. So everything is done. That's your seed hopper. Seeds are in here. This is your seed plate. You have lots of options for different plate sizes.
Yep.
Obviously, it's vacuum, so there's a lot more latitude in the size of the hole that you would use for different things, but knowing the range is helpful. This is a mechanism here that actually pushes down against the seeds and separates so you can singulate seeds. Yep. So things like when you're doing raw carrots, stuff like that, less of an issue with pelleted seeds. So that's where your plate gets put in.
How many seeds are left in the bottom when it's run out?
I'm going to show you that in a second. Okay. None.
Nice.
And that's because you want to buy the attachment. So that is your plates on this side here. Is your gears, and that's your, I tape that in there. Basically, that is your spacing.
Yep.
So, all your gears are right here. These flip off, separate those, and you're good to go.
All toolless changeover?
All toolless changeover. This is your depth right here. That's your depth range. So when you're done for changing out seed, this is your seed hopper. And for you too, can buy one of these at...
Yeah, where did you get it? How much did it cost?
I think I paid around $4,200 for it delivered when I bought it. I think they're a lot more now, but yeah.
Probably.
I don't use this. This just stops the vacuum from running. So if you take this and you sink that down into there and you can watch it through there, you can suck all your seeds out. And then you'll open it a little bit just because nothing falls out, and you just push those last few seeds into here. Take that out, and all your seeds are now inside of here.
Nice. And there's just a small handful. Or are you meaning when there's extra?
If any are down at the bottom.
Yeah.
It gets almost all of them.
Yeah.
So that's just hooked up to another vacuum feed here. And there's nothing else to it. The trick to it, there are definitely things that matter. It's a step-by-step changeover. So, you go out to the field and you're doing, cilantro and beans and stuff like that. You're bringing out 4 or 5 plates. You're changing over. There's all of that changeover. You want to make sure the bottom of your seed hopper is closed, so you don't start pouring your seed in and you go, oops. Not that that's ever happened to me.
Just in theory.
In theory. And that's pretty much it. We, we ended up having to chop one of these down. We just cut it ourselves, but it was cheaper than buying theirs. And that's it. It's loud. There is a learning curve in terms of, you can buy the vacuum gauge that comes with it, because the smaller the seed, the greater the vacuum, it's harder to turn the drive wheel. So if you're on lighter soils and you run your vacuum too high, you're going to find that you didn't get good germination because you weren't looking behind you and your drive wheel wasn't turning.
So the wheel was dragging because A, it was fluffy, and B, there's just like so much pressure sucking the plate in.
So you learn before you go to waste some seed and turn your drive wheel. You also learn to, you're wasting some seed to make sure that your holes are getting filled, either through sizing or space or singulation. But when it works, you'll have a 400-foot row of radishes, and you have 400 times 12, and they are all an inch apart. And it's like any vacuum seeder. I'm sure that the all of them do that, but you go out there and you're like, wow. Or when your green bean plants are exactly 2 inches apart, everything is just singulated perfectly. So, there's some things like when we do our fall beets, we'll go to, 1.5 to 1 3/4 inches, where our spring beets we're at 1 to 1.5 inches. But it's a learning curve, and it's planting at the depth that you're setting it at. It's not like, the Planet Junior that it's just, for some reason it seems to be less forgiving. And I'm not the only one who's experienced that.
With the plant.
Yeah, germination, and I think that, you're not using this for heavy seeding. I do not plant peas with this. I have my Planet Junior, old Planet Junior mounted, and we go to, the biggest hole, and we let as many seeds fall out as possible, and we just, hammer peas as much as possible. This is definitely, you are planting, your beets, your carrots, your beans. I'm sure there's other things people can do. Corn, we can't direct seed corn here. We can, but might as well just throw the seed out there and feed the crows.
Because the birds will eat it, or because you can't? Yeah.
Well, what happens is as soon as the plants start to germinate, they they'll pull the seed. So yeah,
Microcorns.
Exactly, all day long.
Yeah.
But it's a little loud, it whistles. I wear a headset, and that's it. But I have to say, it is. I'm learning it better and better, and it's. I wish I had some. All of our direct seed stuff's way out there. I'm walking. It works really, really well. So the other thing is that it's because our soil is really sandy. I take an air sprayer to this thing at all pressure and spray it down all the time.
Yeah.
Constantly cleaning it up. Oh, it's in back. I'm hearing myself.
Do you always use this planter in perfect conditions like we were seeing out there?
Versus?
Maybe not perfecting. I guess if that's what you've got, then that's.
I don't do anything except onto bed. I would never direct seed onto flat ground, bare ground like that. Everything's done on beds.
Yeah.
So everything is done onto a perfectly made bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never used it on bare ground.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you have much stones for it to send it for a ride either.
What do you call those things?
Stone.
Oh, did you see that one out there? I was one at the end of the bed. No, we don't have rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some out there, but and you bump along and you go, whoa, there's a rock, But like I think I hit 2 rocks yesterday, right, kind of thing. There's 3. We're sand. Yeah, there's no rocks. Cool. We probably one day could probably clean all of our rocks out, all of our stuff. But it's a delight to use. I mean, again, it's like anything else. There's some modifications, But of course, you still see this hanging on the wall here. I haven't used that in a while.
Old earthquake.
But it used to be handy. I mean, it used to be great for things like cilantro, Mm-hmm. It just had that great plate in it where I found that the Planet Junior just didn't do as well. And then I used to push. When I first got here, my first year, I had only push. So I had a Planet Junior, and I would do, 16 400 double rows of onions. I was like, but I have to tell you, I got better germination then than I have been with this. And then that's pretty much it. And the other thing is that we had this made, or made it. It's kind of a combination of both, and just real simple tractor mounted. It's a 2-burner. Actually, it's 2 3-unit burners, but I think a little wider, a little bit more would have been helpful. Everything's a modification, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's things like this, like we, putting a valve in on a sprayer that didn't have one, so you can spray one side over plastic, And then we were like, wow, that's great. So we're about to put like one on each side here, so you can just spray the center row and go across potatoes, So you're not wasting all this spray all over the place. So it's the subtle little things that make all the difference,
Fine-tuning.
Fine-tuning.
What do you consider a key factor to building a successful farm business?
Capital. The problem is, I think that you can't be any one thing. You almost have to be like a jack of all trades in some ways, So I think you are going to run into so many different scenarios. You can be a great grower and terrible at sales.
Yeah.
You can be great at sales and not have the tolerance for crop loss or weeding. You can be great at sales and growing, but just not understand how the science of growing impacts what you do, or be more of that observational kind of noticing all those details. So I think there's just too many elements to it. The other thing is that I think you have to be ready that it's your life. It's not like you get to, you don't ever really get to shut the door on it. It does. It'll shut the door on itself. It's at some point. But it doesn't. It's an ongoing thing, and I think those are successful is just determined in different ways. I know people who do half an acre and delighted with what they do. And actually maybe all they do is they do fall crops and they sell them in the winter or something. So I think it's relative, but we're talking about this operation. To be successful here, I think you have to just have a high tolerance for all of the changes and all the details and the volume of things that are shifting all the time, and actually enjoy it to some level. Because if you don't enjoy it, it's a killer in its own way. But the rest, I think there's all kinds of people. I think also you have to be willing to constantly learn, because you have to be willing, and I would say enjoy it, because that's the part for me. I wake up every day. Today it was, just even just fixing this disc harrow, and my son was like, "How do you get off that off of there?" And I showed him. He said, "It's not coming off. You're gonna pull it." I said, "Yeah, it's just stuck." He's like, "Oh, okay, I didn't realize that." And it's just the experience of knowing that and bringing that experience to the table. And then we discovered that the bearing's blown out. And he says, "Well, the new bearing's not fitting in here." I said, "Because you haven't punched out the old race from the old bearing yet." So it's sort of like it's like being a mechanic, But it's little things like that. And the problem, the difficulty, or whatever you want to call it, is that here we are 30 years later, and now we know what we needed 30 years ago. But isn't that the way life is anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
That's just the way life is. So how do you convey that information? I think, as I said earlier, you have people around you that you're willing to bring, that are both willing to support you, and just are people you can tap into. We have good people around us, so I know my friend who's also helps work on tractors, that I could bring this to him and say, "Okay, I'm not really understanding how this is fitting together," and he'll say, "Boom, boom, boom, boom." Or the guy who's welding for us, who is going to stop it's a big company, but he's going to put us at priority ahead because he understands what we do. My heart goes out to all these people, because they're the people that make it happen. Those 4 men from Jamaica who come here every year, who are grateful to have jobs, but we are indebted to for making this thing happen, because without them, it doesn't happen. So what does it take? I don't know. It takes a lot of things. I think but for me, a willingness, an appreciation, gratitude, humility. So I don't think you have to be a great business person.
Are those the type of things you would tell yourself when you were getting started?
Never. You mean at the beginning of my career?
Yeah. What would you say to a new farmer now?
Oh. Consider the actions you take, because you may look back on them and wish you'd done differently.
Do you have an example?
No. That's funny.
I feel like something came to mind there.
Well, I just think back to, I think that that's funny. What came to mind? I was just thinking that all of those people are resources. So keeping all those relationships open and in good standing. And having I don't know if I had the humility to, always ask the question I wish I'd asked along the way. I want to figure this out myself.
Sure.
And I think that's part of the challenge is you don't need to. You don't need to. I'll forever be indebted to Paul Harlow, because Paul was nothing but generous. And he would answer any question, no matter how stupid it was I had. And I don't know that I was always as generous to other people. I think I learned that later on. But he was always that way. And it was just that piece of it for me, generous in all kinds of ways. And I wouldn't be here. His that way of being helped me to grow a business. I mean, he let me use Kestrel. He let me use land there. He let me barter a way into it. Let me use the infrastructure, and let me kind of ask a lot of dumb questions, or weren't dumb, but learning along the way. And he had to learn somewhere. We all have to learn somewhere, but I don't think we see it that way. So I guess I don't know that that's an easy answer, like it's nice and wrap it up tight, but it's, that's why I say it's the relationships with people around us. And we're all getting there however we need to, wherever there is. It's quality of life at the end of the day. This is not, I don't know anybody who says, shit, I'm gonna make a lot of money, I'm gonna be a farmer, I think we're all in it for our own personal and maybe philosophical, maybe metaphysical reasons. To do this. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if I have a nice, easy answer to it.
It doesn't have to be an easy answer.
Perfect.
What fulfills you in this career?
Feeding people, watching things grow, the magic of how we can produce food from seeds. That I was gifted enough to be a steward of this amazing piece of land here at the in Vermont at the base of Ascutney on a river. What an amazing, amazing gift that is, to be able to have that. It wakes me up every morning.
It's a pretty good reason. Is the farm you have now anything that you ever imagined what you thought you would have when you got started?
Never.
When you got started, what did you think you might have someday?
15 acres, 20 acres, 5 acres of woods, 15 acres, maybe 10 in cultivation, maybe a little bit more rural. Never considered that I'd have to have employees. I mean, I just wasn't thinking like, oh, this is a business that has employees. I was thinking like, oh, it's going to be a farm and we're going to make it happen, and just didn't dawn on me. Didn't dawn on me the kind of that where we are today, that year-round production model. I'm not sure I saw that in it the same way. I probably saw something a little more homesteady. Yep. Bringing, having with an income of some sort. Yep.
Homesteading with an income, that's everybody's dream, right?
Not mine.
Not anymore.
No, it hasn't been for a long time. You asked me what I thought, as kind of, sitting at the beginning, what I would have said. Nope. I mean, I remember the day Mike Gia brought me here. This is part of the story we haven't talked about a whole lot, but I had a farm viability plan. We were at the end of the 5 years of that plan, of which at that point we were going to buy something. I wasn't financially in a position to buy anything. Didn't matter. It was still at that point. Mike Gia called me up and said to me, have you seen the RFP on the property in Weathersfield? I said, how many acres? He said, 70 something. I said, 74, I think. I said, which property? And we talked about this. And I said, that property, I called about that a couple of years back. They want $1 million. He said, this isn't about what the cost of the property is. What this is about is going through the process so you begin to understand what it takes to buy a property. It's through the land trust. Some of these things get worked out. It may not be the property for you. Your job is to go through the process. At 5 years, that's the next step. Interesting. I said, okay. He said, all right, we're going to go up and look at it. They're having an open house on Saturday. We can go up and walk the property and look at the land. I said, okay. Here we are. And that was a fascinating journey of its own. Now there, I would say, is if you are dealing with the land trust, have a farmer mentor you through the process, not the land trust. And I am adamant about that. Not that they didn't do good by me, but there were things that were not directly in my interest as the farmer that should have been handled differently.
Because they had a conservation mindset, or
because, well, that's an interesting question. Like why? So I've never analyzed their position on it. No, because their mindset is one of bringing as many parties to the table as possible.
Yeah.
so that it's a community endeavor.
Right.
This didn't need another party involved in this. It would have been fine on my own. Leave that there. I just can't say more about that.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it, and the cost that was incurred as a result of some of the legal ramifications of that component. So that's an interesting piece, which I just think it's a part of the puzzle, but
So you didn't have a farmer mentor at the time?
no,
I see.
they don't connect you with someone like that. Would have been helpful. But I don't know that my scenario would have necessarily applied to anybody else. That's the problem. But there were I ended up having to assume a lot of the legal costs of the negotiation because I was the owner of the property. But, there's some challenges to that because the flip side to that is I wouldn't be here without the land trust. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So, but I didn't have a lot of money to spend to begin with, and I ended up having to pay these legal bills that were part of trying to figure out the ramifications of the decision the land trust had made on behalf of me as the owner of the property, because they can't do it. They never become the owner of the property. And it's a little complicated.
Yeah.
That's another conversation of its own. So anyway, so that's how so then what happened, just basically the rest of that story though is, I just kept taking the next step. So we found ourselves owning a property that I had $5,000 in the bank. I had the infrastructure to farm 12 acres. And no cold storage, and just didn't have any of the things that were going to be needed to make this happen. So I had the land and none of the infrastructure. And so here we are 12 years later, and that's what we've been doing, is building the infrastructure. So, I'm 60 now, so I started this at 48. My son will have it much better off than I did, because he's got the infrastructure and debt's been serviced, systems are in place, so I think that's you can't necessarily speak to that, but that was our journey in this. So.
Okay, so obviously this is not your first career, so what made you want to get into farming?
That's interesting. So when in 1986, I was still working on a master's in counseling, and I leased to own a 23-acre farm in Durham, New Hampshire. And the endeavor was about producing food for ourselves. And that's a whole another story, but that became, we had such an abundance of food that it was, okay, now what do we do here? Then there was like, oh, we'll sell some of the restaurants. Oh, we'll do the farmer's market. Oh, wow, I really love this thing. Let's farm more, So this guy came next door, had a tractor. He turned over more land. We planted more. The next year I had 2 acres of vegetables. And by the third year, I'm already on the board of NOFA, New Hampshire.
You got sucked in.
Yeah, and it was all about food production for ourselves, So that was the, at the same point, dual careers. I'm also at that point involved in, doing mental health work, therapy work. So kind of did both for about 7 or 8 years, stopped farming for about 7, 8 years. In 2000, decided I just wanted to do this. And in 2000, at that point, moved from Maryland to Vermont to return to farming in New England. And that was my intention, was to farm. So here we are 22 years later. Essentially 30 years later, but 22 years later.
And sounds like it was a passion move. You just enjoyed it.
Yeah, much more so than anything else I was doing. I mean, just to be clear, in 91, when we were moving, my ex-wife got scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania, where we were moving to Pennsylvania 91, 92. At that same time, before she got her scholarship, I had looked at 3 farms in Vermont. So I was ready to go to do farming back then. It was more that I think there was this pause. And I was always interested in okay, I'm gonna farm, and how can I include some sort of therapy kind of work at the same time?
Yeah.
It wasn't like I wanted to give that up, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. It was more that her journey took us somewhere, we went, and then I said, okay, that time's up.
Yeah.
Time to return to what I wanted to do. So, yeah. But clearly passionate about it. And I think being where I am now and knowing what I know now, this is fine. I just had no idea what it really took to make this happen. I mean, I remember being here the first year or two and going, what the fuck did I do? What did I do? This is so far beyond me. I can't even imagine what this takes to make it work. But again, there's a lot of support out there, from, FSA said, we can reschedule loans, we can do this, there's some grant money, we can help you build a storage here. And that's just happened over and over again, So the systems that we often complain about certainly have supported and I think they support agriculture quite a bit, in a lot of ways. I'm not sure what the cost is to us at the end, but at the moment, it has served, I think that it has served me, it has served this operation quite a bit. Whether it was a land trust helping us buy the property, or Castagna Foundation helping us get equipment, or, Vern being an unbelievable resource in things, or, Paul Harlow being there, or then, Department of Ag, loaning, giving us a grant to build an $18,000, storage facility, or two of them that we've built so far, or, some money to buy just pieces of equipment that have been integral to what we do. Or actually, even people in the community loaning us slow money at times. So I had somebody who was very generous at a 2% loan who loaned us 5%. Loaned us money at quite a bit that we paid back. So it's like, how do you have anything but gratitude?
Yeah.
So.
It's time for our special segment, What's in Your Pocket?
What's in your pocket? What do you not leave the house with in the morning?
Oh, interesting. My pockets are almost. Pocket knife. A gift from my partner every day. There it is.
Nice.
My wallet, which basically, you talk about men's wallets. That's it.
Nice. Thin.
No credit cards. Haven't had a credit card in 25 years.
Not at all, huh?
What's that?
No, you just don't have one?
Don't do credit. We do. The whole thing is just like as little debt as possible. Some cash and my phone.
It's pretty light.
That's how I travel. That's it. And a fishing rod in the back of my truck. And that's been more, that for me, I'd say in the past 5. Now that we've gotten to a point, so we'll walk a little bit.
Yeah.
This is the piece of equipment that really matters. I would say now that we've hit some modicum of success, I put in probably a good 16 years of just grind,
Yeah.
And I would say in the past 5 years, we have come to a little bit of, we're okay. And when I mean okay, that we're covering our bills. I think we're going from year to year. We're not doing terrible. So, this is it, and this is that's sanity,
As we're walking and talking, we get close to a shed kind of near his house, and he points out a kayak. And I'll just describe this kayak is it's good size. There's a paddle on it. It's got footholds, a cup holder, place to mount your phone, comfy seat. You can tell that this kayak is just set up for relaxation.
And it's, trying to get out on that as much as possible. I also now have a motorboat that my dad passed away and left me some money. So I bought a motorboat, and every January I've been going down to, Florida and going fishing for 2 weeks, in the Everglades. So we're doing okay, and I think there were, it's that learning curve of like, what does it take? And we're islands. It's so nice. Like one day, I think 2 years ago, Mark and Krista came down here for some reason. They were in the area. And we walked and talked, and they looked at my stuff. And, I'd love to get up to their farm because it was just like, I think just to see what other people do. We don't get that enough in the middle of a season or some point, to what are you doing? Oh, wow, what do you do? We're making it up as we go along so much, and I think even like, I don't have time to watch it. Like you might say, wow, there's all these what do you call what you do?
Podcasts?
Podcasts. I don't have time to watch them. And when I sit down at night, I can't like sit down at something and concentrate. I'm going to read up about Colorado potato beetles because it's a necessity,
Yeah.
But I'm not going to start watching podcasts. I might do it in the wintertime,
Yeah.
or it might come up on a search somewhere or if I was looking for something. Or it might come up Glimmer, it's like snippets. Snippets are really good for me, but like having to actually sit through a whole article, it's like I got a stack of like Grower magazine inside, I've read the past freaking 4 months of them. They're sitting there. I'm not going to read them. Maybe I'll read them next winter, but it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And by the time I'm ready to get there, I'm done. It's not happening. So, bottom line is that, this is taking some time is huge. And we don't get a lot of time. And when the smaller we are, I think the work is, I watch, Kara and Ryan and how they've shifted a little bit. And my hat goes off to them, and it's working for them. However it's working for them. We don't get to sit in judgment. Well, maybe they did this and this. Who cares? They made it happen. They're living their lives, We get one pass through, in my opinion, and just got to sit back and honor that and say, God, good for them. Good for us.
How do you get past that mental block of, I could be out cultivating because there's always something to do on the farm,
Oh, you're
and
right.
I gotta go.
I gotta go do that.
Fishing.
I don't know the answer. I think it's experience of like, wow, we let that go last year and we did okay. It's like, oh my God, we lost 4 acres of our 6 acres of potatoes last year, and we still made money. Holy shit! Like, I think you just have to have some experience to base it on. It's like, I watched Paul Harlow after like the Katrina floods or whatever the floods were, and he's still in business. And he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, he made it happen somehow, So I don't know the answer to that. I think that I think a lot of it is experience. I think it's just having been through something, and acts of faith. But we plant seeds. That's an act of faith.
Yep.
We grow vegetables. That's an act of faith. I've got out there, so every one of those, so we're in 3 broccoli plantings. So that's 40, 100, 160, which is 160 times 16,000 broccoli plants. Our experience for the past 3 years is we've lost our broccoli plantings every single time. We're still planting again. We're now treating with oxidate and copper. We had some success last year. I see no black spot on anything out there. Good growing season. Well, it worked. Will it work again next year? Not necessarily. So we also have, 80,000 heads of lettuce, planned for this year. Will that work? Hopefully. If that doesn't, so I think it's more of that diversity of planting, and I think you keep pushing ahead. And it's like people come in and say, "Oh my God, you're taking all that to compost," and I'm like, I don't know.
Diversity of planting. Some people have focused down a bit and they're like just doing roots or fall storage crops or whatever.
Yep.
How many crops are you growing, and have you narrowed that down? Or
Yes. We grow at least two less than we used to. I think where it's less is, I would say that we grow, can't not grow carrots, can't not grow onions, can't not grow beets, So that's a big portion of it. We don't do the direct seeded stuff as much. So we're only doing radish, cilantro, and green beans in addition to the 3 that I mentioned. That was a big narrow down. So we don't do dill anymore. We don't do baby bok choy. They weren't making money, and we don't need them. We'll do spring bok choy. We'll do fall bok choy. We'll do some winter bok choy, some tatsoi. Done. We don't do as much field greens. So we try to keep up with some production of arugula. Every week, no more. We just don't do it anymore. Somebody else will pick that up. But brassicas are big. We do so we've expanded our spring and fall plantings of cabbage. We're still pushing broccoli because if we can get our broccoli, it's a big crop for us, and we're keeping our fingers crossed. I don't know if it'll continue. Kale's a big one. Lettuce is a big one. We grow 4 varieties. Lettuce, 5 actually, but 4. We used to grow 7. So I'm not sure we're growing less. We're growing more peppers than we ever grew. But same varieties, just more volume. So I don't know if we've scaled down. we expanded this whole flower thing, which we're probably not going to continue a whole lot of. And that's, I think, where we're, so the answer to your question is an interesting one, because the farm stand has been hard to staff. It does fairly well. It probably makes about 10% of our income or so. But if I didn't have to deal with it, it would be a game changer for me. That means I no longer have to worry about anything on the weekends at all. That means I never have to worry about hiring somebody to do that kind of stuff. So, that's something we've talked about,
Yeah.
My son says, leave it running, he'll start taking it over. So we're considering that. So things are in flux a little bit in that regard. But, we're still doing the same rotation, same crops. We have so much land, we're doing the same rotations for the most part.
Yeah, no.
Hasn't changed a whole lot. Varieties changed. Like, we're going to probably pull one of our tomato varieties. We don't love it anymore, kind of thing. But we're not just doing, it's beginning to end. We're still doing asparagus to winter squash, or potatoes the whole way through. But we do more. We've, we probably increased our kale this year by 30%. We last year increased our lettuce by 40% and sold, 60% more. So it's, but some of it's shifting too. It's not, things aren't shifting by crop so much. I think it's shifting a little bit by demand. And I will tell you that right now our demand is exceeding our supply in a lot of places, which is not bad. So that's what I got for you. Enough story for your...
No, that's excellent. Thank you so much.
I'm Andy Chamberlain, and that was The Farmer's Share. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any free bonus content, or visit thefarmersshare.com to check out more episodes and interviews. This podcast is supported by the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association and the Ag Engineering Program of the University of Vermont Extension. Thank you for listening.